in effect overnight, and that will be in effect until 9 a.m. south of I-69, north of I-69. That goes until noon. Snow overnight will transition to freezing rain first thing Wednesday morning, and then change over to all rain during the day on Wednesday. Temperatures dropping into the 20s overnight, but rising to near 30 degrees by dawn, then rising to near 40 degrees by noon on Wednesday, and again, changing over to all rain by afternoon. I'm meteorologist Paul Gross.
It's time for Lions Review. Presented by MGM Grand Detroit, the king of sportsbooks. Now here's the voice of the Detroit Lions, Dan Miller.
Hey, what's up? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Lions Review. I am Dan Miller, as the voice just told you, and we are here with Mike O'Hara from DetroitLions.com. This chat with Mike O'Hara brought to you by Comerica Bank. Experience full-service banking at Comerica Bank. Learn more at Comerica.com. Let's just get that out of the way right off the bat. Michael, this is another fine mess you've gotten us into.
Dan, you've 28 words you said, and you haven't asked me yet if that's the worst loss I've ever seen. What's wrong with you?
We're going to get there. I've been calling them for 16 years, and it took me back to the game in Baltimore in 2010, 2009. I think it was Schwartz's first year. I believe the final was 48-3. And it was the game where Jim Schwartz had called a timeout while his team was on defense, like in the middle of the game, like no reason to call a timeout. He gathered them around and reminded them, compete and tackle. And they literally gave up a touchdown on the next play. And it was just such a blowout. And this game reminded me of that. And it was one of those games, Mike, where I kept looking up, and it seemed like there was 10 minutes to go in the third quarter forever in this game on Saturday.
Yeah, it reminded me. I remember the Baltimore game. I think I was working for Fox Sports Detroit at the time, and I don't think I was traveling. I remember watching it on TV, and I remember the look on Schwartz's face when the very next play, exactly the opposite of what he was hoping to inspire, had happened. It was like, come on, buddy, we're not going to do that. What, are you crazy? Not going to run. But what it reminded me of was it was 2004, I believe, Thanksgiving Day. Lions get a 3-0 lead against the mighty Colts, and it didn't last long. It didn't hold up. Let's put it that way. And I remember Manning, Peyton threw the 6 touchdown passes. And Dan, I think the last one was on the last play or the end of the third quarter, and as Manning jogged off the field, and one of the guys on the sideline sort of came up to congratulate him, and he just waved him off and shook his head like, this was too easy. This was just practice.
Yeah, I remember that game. I was actually doing sidelines for Westwood 1 on that game, and got a real clear view of that one. It was yeah, and those are games you never want to relive, and situations you never want to be reminded of, and yet this is where we were in this game, is that they were looking like that team. And, you know, it doesn't change what's going on, because what's going on, big picture, is we know that things are not good right now. They're looking for a general manager. They're looking for a head coach. You're not doing that if things are going well. But at the same time, that's a national game. You don't want to put that out there, man. And if you're a player, you know, it's like Chase Daniel said after the game, that crushes your pride. That's how you measure yourself as a pro. And to have that happen, I know it was a long week, but man, that was not good in any way, shape, or form. There was just nothing good that came of that game other than Jamal's return. Happy for him, but even he'd tell you, you know, late in a game like that, when you're down, whatever the score was at that point, it's tough to feel real good about things.
You know, even the survivors, so to speak, didn't rally around each other in that game. And as you could watch, as they were, you know, scoring on their first possession and their second and their third and then their fifth and their seventh and all that, some guys weren't even down in a good defensive position at all. They were just sort of, if they run into me, I might wrap my arms around them. I really very seldom question the effort and the desire of professional athletes. I mean, because look, they go through an awful lot, and they are really at their very bottom world-class athletes. I didn't see an awful lot of heart in that team. You know, and Tim Twentyman, my writing partner at DetroitLions.com, and I were driving home. He was dropping me off, and we go to the games together. And I says, tell me if I'm wrong, but this looked like fifth grade homeroom and you get in there and there's an announcement, the teacher's going to be an hour late. Kids, take care of yourselves. And you know what happens then, right? It's mayhem. And that's what it looked like.
Part of that, I guess, is in reference to the fact that they didn't have their interim head coach. They did not have their defensive coordinator. They did not have their top 3 defensive assistants. And that's certainly part of it. And you're missing your best defensive player in Trey Flowers. And, you've got the remnants of a defense that was put together that hasn't even come close to working. But even with that, these are NFL players. These are NFL players out there, and they got just trucked and manhandled. And, we'll see what happens on Sunday. But it's really more than anything else, Mike, it's time to turn the page. And it's time to put this organization in the hands of whomever they choose next to turn this thing around and let them start going to work. And I know they got a game coming up on Sunday, and you got to go out there and represent yourself, and you got a job to do, and I got a job to do. But if anything, this brought into clear focus that they need to, look, there wasn't any question they needed to make massive changes. Now it's just like you get to the point where you're like, please get started with those massive changes as soon as humanly possible. And I think everything really kicks into gear next Monday, when it's much easier to start doing some interviews and the bulk of the people that you want to talk to. Not everybody, but the bulk.
Yeah, well, it's starting Monday, I would think. Let's get serious time. And Dan, look, they could have played or not played last week's game. They could play or not play Sunday's game against Minnesota. It's not going to change what they have to do. You and I could probably cut 15 players right now who aren't going to be there. That's the easy part. It's getting into the other stuff and it's putting pieces of the team together. That's the hard part, and just those fine little decisions that you make between which linebacker, which defensive end, that's the stuff that really makes your team. And like I said, sure, you can go in there right now with a chainsaw and cut away whatever, but then it's putting good stuff back together. That's the hard part.
Yeah, I think part of it though, Mike, is that you are undoing some of what has been done. That's part of the hard part. You're taking a team that, for reasons that now appear to be just so misguided based on the results that we've seen, full of 250-pound plus linebackers that just seem archaic in this league. And you're watching people run by them left, right, and middle. And you just don't think the next coach is going to be buying into that kind of system. But yet you've got to find a way out of some of these contracts. You've got to find guys to replace them. Same thing with some of the guys on the defensive line and some of the expatriates that are out there that don't figure to be part of anything with this team going forward. As much as adding, there's the undoing, which is also part of the job for the next crew that comes in.
Dan, and also, and you're exactly right about that, but also, and you know this, that every year there's massive change on every roster. And I was, before the game Saturday, I was just going through the who was active and inactive, the 53. And I think, this is off the top of my head now, I should have written it down, but I think there were 19 players on that 53-player roster who weren't there last year. And that's a lot of turnover in itself. Yeah. And you're going to see even more, I think. You really are. And you're going to, whoever comes in has got to finagle the draft and add picks and make deals and all that and start really putting things together. I mean, it's kind of been explained to me that and you talked about the 250-pound linebackers. It's a speed game now in the National Football League, and they don't have it. They really don't.
No. And this is what made him successful in New England, and it worked there, clearly. Didn't work here. And doesn't, it's that linebacking core is just not acquitting itself well. And look, it's not just them, and that's unfair to single them out. That's not my intent. The front isn't good. The linebackers aren't good. And maybe because of what's happening in front of them, the secondary isn't good right now. I mean, look, Mike, they're on course to be the worst defense in the history of the Detroit Lions. For the second consecutive year, they're going to allow the most points in the National Football League. The object of the exercise for a defense is to not allow the other team to score as often as possible. They've been the worst team in the league at that now for 2 straight years.
Yeah, and somebody told me that their theory was building the team from the back to the front. In other words, the safeties to I'm not exactly sure if I agree with that, but if in fact that's true or even close, safety position is the weakest link on the team, in my opinion. And
yeah, I don't know if it's the weakest. I mean, I look, there's an argument there. The linebacking core is not good, and I guess part of my saying that too is I don't know what's happened to Tracy Walker this year. I really thought he was ascending into a really good safety in this league, and maybe it's, again, I'll go back to what I said a moment ago, a byproduct of what's happening in front of him. But it just hasn't worked out this year where he built on what he did last year. And it started in camp, really strangely, with the way that they were utilizing him and not having him on the field and things like that. And we were all kind of looking around saying, what's up at that point?
Yeah, and who was playing ahead of him and all that. I kind of wondered about that too. But then when he's gotten his chances, from the middle of the season on, and really, I don't think has contributed an awful lot. But look, there's not any one guy who has
no.
It's not a one guy thing. It's not a one position weakness. It's really sort of an epidemic from. And there are some parts of that team that I think that are good. I think you can win with their offensive line. I know you can win with that quarterback. I think they got a pretty good young running back, and wide receivers, tight ends. Everybody has those now. They're almost interchangeable from team to team. There's so many good receivers coming out of college that you just get one on the second, third, fourth, fifth round, and you might get yourself a star. I don't think you need to get the Calvin Johnson anymore like you used to. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I think they're good enough on offense where I think you could live with what they have right now if you had to. But defensively, absolutely not.
Yeah, I still wonder just how you evaluate some of those guys in the secondary when you have just nothing happening up front. I mean, it would drive me nuts when I would hear people stand at a podium and question, oh, well, maybe it's not the pressure, maybe it's the coverage. No. And there's people out there that have forgotten more about football than I know. You've got to pressure the passer. You can't cover your way consistently into a sack. You can't be a poor team with a defensive front and cover your way into being a good defense. It doesn't work that way. You have to be able to get after the passer. You have to.
Absolutely, Dan. And you can't have quarterbacks who can't run either because it's a speed league. It's the way it is now. You have guys who get older and they know the angles and they're crafty and all that. But if you don't have the basic, if you can't run, then you just can't play quarterback in the National Football League. That's the way it is.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back. You're going to hear from Lions interim head coach Darrell Bevell, who, of course, was not there. And that's part of the story that developed last week leading up to that game against Tampa Bay, was his not being allowed to be with the team. A little bit later in the show, you'll hear from Matthew Stafford as we talk about his week. Very short day against Tampa Bay and what might be coming as they get set for the Vikings coming up. So we got a lot to talk about. We're glad you're with us here on this edition of Lions Review. We'll step aside and come right back.
back to more Lions Review. Presented by MGM Grand Detroit, the king of sportsbooks. Here's Dan Miller.
Great motion right to left. Brady's got it, wants to throw. Brady stepping up, throws deep right side, wants Gronkowski. Got him inside the 5, end zone touchdown. Beat Tracy Walker just one-on-one. Brady floated it out there. You know he trusts Gronk, and Gronk took it home 33 yards.
Well, it's the matchup that you want. Again, you talking about Gronk, who's at 6'7", going against Tracy Walker. And again, just like basketball, get it up, let the bigger man come down with the ball. And they've had this connection for so many years.
Yeah, Joe Abramson, our spotter, said that was the GOAT to the GOAT. It might have been. Those guys have been doing it for a long time. And obviously, Brady, best ever, and Gronk right up there with anybody who's ever played tight end. So, man, it was just so many. It was, at one point, Lomas looks at me and said, it's like 7-on-7 out there. And that's what it looked like.
Yeah, I agree with him. It certainly looked that way to me, too.
Yep. All right, let's get to our interview with interim head coach Darrell Bevell, brought to you by MGM Grand Detroit, the king of sportsbooks. Had a chance to talk with him. He, of course, as we said a moment ago, was not there. COVID protocols enforced that, and I just asked him if that made for one of the toughest days of his career.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it. That's what I felt. I really felt helpless. You know, with the rules, you can't call anybody. I can't text anybody. I can't, get any information back and forth. So it was just a helpless feeling to sit there and, just kind of have to watch what was going on and really have no effect on it at all.
Having been through that and the league, let's pray we're back to some sense of normalcy next year. But having been through that and the league kind of working through everything and everything's fluid, would you advocate going forward that if somebody's in your position and constantly testing negative, that they be allowed to communicate in some way? I mean, it is 2020, soon to be 2021. We got that capability.
Yeah, I mean, we've learned how to use all this technology, and that's the one thing that they're trying to keep from using, which in some ways I understand. I do think that there probably was a possible way to be there at the game without being in contact with anybody, maybe even a private booth to be able to still do the game. But, maybe those are options that they'll look at if this continues, through another year.
Let's hope that it does. And let me get to some of the things that happened in that game. Big blow early, losing Matthew Stafford, first series. How much does that set you back? You're scripted. You're thinking you're going to have your number one guy in there, and then all of a sudden you've got to change things.
Yeah, well, I mean, Matthews are, is our star player, really, and when anytime you lose your best player on offense, I think it's going to affect you in a negative way. And love the guys that we have, love the guys that come in and step in, but they're not Matthew Stafford, and so you still have to kind of get a feel for the changes that you need to make, and you need to switch quickly to say, okay, now Chase is in. This is what he does well, that's again another reason that I wish I was there to be able to help.
Sticking with the offense for a second, really a tough day to get anything going. What were the biggest problems that they presented for you?
Well, I mean, they're a talented group. We talked about up front, being able to handle them in protection. I thought we did fairly well. I mean, obviously there was a couple sacks that we did end up giving up. And but it really does come down to us, Dan. We have to make sure that we're executing, that we're communicating. The play that Matthew got hurt on was just a simple miscommunication where we've got to do a better job of communicating because we're protected that way, and we end up letting a guy come free. And when a guy's free and the quarterback's not expecting him to be free, then problems can happen.
And that said, cautionary tale. You face a front like that and get behind a couple scores, it becomes really difficult because at that point, they're not real concerned with the run. They're just getting after your quarterback.
Yeah, it just becomes a track meet. They can pin their ears back. So what if you stick a run in there, and get 5, 6, 7 yards, they're just right back in their pass rush mode. And they had as good a guys as any, with JPP and Barrett and Sue. And, so it's a great group to get after the quarterback.
Defensively, hard to get stops, and they got rolling in this game. And really from that opening drive, and, talked to Everson after, and he was, kicking himself for that penalty that kept you on the field. But from that opening drive on, they had you back on your heels, and it was tough to get them off the field.
Yeah, the thing is, Dan, is momentum's a strange thing. And, we did a great job in the opening kickoff to pin them down there inside the 20. And then really you held them to a 3-play and out situation right there. And, you never know how that swings the momentum and confidence that helps your team. And instead we end up getting that penalty and giving them the situation where they were able to, continue that drive and obviously go down and score a touchdown. And then the game totally changes.
pass defense appears to be a pretty significant issue right now. And there's always that talk about, is it pressure? Is it coverage? Which comes first? Which is more important? Things like that. Right now, both seem to be problematic. I know that you've got a lot of guys that are beat up, but it's tough on these longish downs when you can't get them off the field.
Yeah, it really is. And it does go hand in hand. You'd like to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. And if, pressure on the quarterback takes pressure off the back end. And then if you can't get pressure, then you got to put pressure on them with the back end. And, right now we're not doing those in concert very well.
Hey, special teams, look, there was a positive thing here. Let's talk about that for just a second. Jamal's return touchdown, the job that unit did. And then Jamal with a couple of tackles on special teams as well. Did some positive things out there.
Yeah, Ag showed up big, really liked what he did. I mean, he's definitely a dynamic guy when he gets the ball in his hands in terms of return game. So the thing is just giving him those opportunities. They're doing a great job of kicking it, out of bounds or kicking the touchbacks on kickoffs. But they gave him an opportunity on a punt, and the guys blocked well. We were able to make the most of it. He made a couple guys miss, including the kicker finally, right? And so so that was a big play for him.
And there was Jamal Agnew with a nice play, and you like to see that. Jamal is one of the good dudes on this football team. There's a lot of good guys on this football team, but I just he's a guy that's very easy to root for. He gives you everything he's got, whatever they ask him to do. Mike, Jamal Agnew's the kind of guy, just go out there and do it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It wasn't just the punt return touchdown either. He made 2 tackles on punts that were just absolutely stone guys, and we're talking about a guy, 5'8", 180, giving up his body right there. And also, I thought Jared Davis, for what he's gone through, not playing the role he wanted to play from the opening kickoff when he tackled the return man at the 18-yard line. I thought he gave it what he had. Really did.
And he's a guy that's facing a big off season. He's got to figure out where he belongs in this league. I mean, I don't know if he'll be back here. It depends on what the next coaching staff wants to do, but he has gone from, a guy that was a first-round draft pick to a guy that now has questions to answer out on the field, and he'll have to find where the best place is for him going forward. And that's not always easy, and that's the next step for him, though, after this season.
Yeah, Tim, and I thought his second year when he had 6 sacks and missed a couple of games and really was starting to get to the quarterback, and he had spent that offseason between year 2 and 3 with one of those, sack gurus, pass rush gurus, where he could beat guys one-on-one, not just on blitzes. Got hurt, and he's never been the same player.
Nope. And that's what we're talking about, a defense that's struggling right now. When we come back, put the focus on the offense. Had a chance to talk with Matthew Stafford. That conversation is going up. We'll look ahead to the Vikings as well. You are listening to Lions Review. We're glad you're with us. Much more coming up right after this.
Fox News, I'm Ann Carrick. The Senate did not vote today on increasing COVID-19 relief payments. One group not getting any relief, landlords.
CEO of the California Apartment Association, Tom Bannon.
The smaller landlords are the most impacted without getting rent payments because they count on the rent payments to make the mortgage payment.
Mom and pop landlords own about 40% of rental properties.
Fox's Christina Partsinevelis. Wuhan, China likely had 10 times the coronavirus cases reported by government officials, according to a study from China's Center for Disease Control and Prevention. New York Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin on Fox's Bill Hemmer reports with guest host Eric Shawn.
China has a very long game here. Their approach far outlives one presidential administration to the next.
Zeldin there to talk about President-elect Biden's response to China, given his new information about the study. America's listening to Fox News.
I-75 northbound between Springwells and Clark Street, 75 southbound between Verner Highway and Springwells. There is construction, the right lane closed through late January. I'm Peggy Hodge, WJR Traffic and Weather First.
Winter weather advisory continues in effect overnight, and that will be in effect until 9 a.m. south of I-69, north of I-69. That goes until noon. Snow overnight will transition to freezing rain first thing Wednesday morning and then change over to all rain during the day on Wednesday. Temperatures dropping into the 20s overnight, but rising to near 30 degrees by dawn, then rising to near 40 degrees by noon on Wednesday, and again, changing over to all rain by afternoon. I'm meteorologist Paul Gross.
to more Lions Review. Presented by MGM Grand Detroit, the king of sportsbooks. Here's Dan Miller.
Brady back, sets in the pocket, throws end zone, caught, touchdown. Antonio Brown, second week in a row, the former Steeler, has come up with a touchdown. He might be starting to catch fire at the right time for Tampa. Brady just threaded the needle that time through a number of defenders. Found him in the back of the end zone for the score. It is 33-0. Tampa is now over 400 yards of offense in the first half.
You've seen a lot of football, Michael. I don't know how many times you've seen a team go over 400 yards in the first half. That was pretty insane.
Well, it is a different era.
Yeah, you think?
You know what, though, Dan? I was watching. I thought to myself, boy, were a lot of people wrong, myself included. I just looked at the last 4 or 5 games of last season in New England, and Brady really looked like he had hit the ledge. He really did. And now he's playing better and better, and he's got 36 touchdowns. He had 24 all of last season. It's amazing.
Do you think this is a legitimate Super Bowl team? They were missing their top running back in this game too. He's back now from COVID. They activated him this week. Good defense.
Good.
Number 1 in the league against the run. Do you think it's a legit Super Bowl team or no?
I think it's a legit, good, solid playoff team, but not a Super Bowl team. I think you can get to their quarterback. I think you can get Brady off his spot with a good defense, and you'll run into good defenses in the playoffs. And I just
who's playing good defense right now, who's looking very, very good? Green Bay Packers.
Try and win in Lambeau, okay, when they're going good. It's really hard. You saw what happened last night.
I think Brady's played in cold weather before.
He has. But, New England isn't exactly Miami, okay? At least I don't recall it being.
Both on the East Coast, right? But
his arm game looks live and strong. It really does.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the Packers. I'll say that. I'm really impressed by what they're doing. Rodgers looks unbelievable. They run the ball. They have rebuilt that defense in the past couple of years to the point where it's pretty darn good. They get after the passer now. Got some really good guys up front.
And, he talked about that Brady being upset when they drafted the quarterback of the future in round, whatever it was, the 24th player or whatever overall. And you look at the Pro Bowl voting, and there's Brady. I'm not just Brady. There's Rodgers. There's a wide receiver. There's a running back. There's a tight end with 10 touchdowns.
Who was with the Lions, by the way? If you want to rub some salt, Robert Tunyon was here.
Yeah, he was.
Between him and Travis Fulgham, every time you look up, you just feel like it's beating you over the head a little bit.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, no. Onward and upward, my friend. All right, this interview with Matthew Stafford brought to you by the Henry Ford Health System, the official healthcare provider of the Detroit Lions. Had a chance to talk with Matthew, and we started with the obvious question coming off the game in which he was knocked out, just how he was feeling.
I'm doing okay. Obviously, wish I could have been out there for the full game. It's disappointing to only get the first drive in. Something that when it first happened, I really didn't think was going to be a big issue. Thought I was going to be able to finish the game and be fine, but just had some trouble putting weight on it. Then went up to try to get some tests and all that kind of stuff, and just wasn't able to make it back in.
Yeah, it's interesting because we watched it. And then it looked like you kind of went behind the bench at one point and were looking at a replay to figure out what had happened. It was an odd looking thing because it wasn't a huge hit. It was just kind of you got to push, and then something went very wrong after that. What did you see when you looked at it?
Yeah, just that, really. I was trying to figure out if I stepped on his foot or what. I felt it roll over the outside and just wasn't sure how it happened. I was focused kind of downfield past him when it happened, and just a bad step and kind of got a little bit unlucky there. But it wasn't like he said, it wasn't anything malicious on his part or a big hit or anything, just kind of a freak thing. And that's kind of makes it even more disappointing for me is that it wasn't in the line of fire really.
NFL Network reported yesterday, sprained ankle. Is that your understanding what you're dealing with, or are you still undergoing tests?
Yeah, kind of still figuring it out. But yeah, it doesn't matter right at this point. It's down there. Lower. We'll go hockey, lower leg injury, and keep it moving.
Perfect. Let me ask you this. I imagine when they ask you to list worst weeks in pro football, that might have been up there. You fire a coordinator on Monday, you're shut down on Tuesday, you lose coaches on Wednesday, and you got a head coach, a defensive coordinator, assistant coaches that aren't there. You get hurt in the game. Game didn't go well. I don't know what's left at that point. That's a tough week.
Yeah, it was. Not only for me personally, but everybody. That's tough week for our coaches that want to be there. Understand they have to follow what the league says and not be able to be there and all that. Just a tough week. And then obviously, the game going the way it did was really disappointing. So, only thing to do now is to bounce back and we get a division opponent at home. A chance to get that taste out of our mouth here on Sunday.
I want to get to that in 1 second, certainly ask you about the Vikings, but just you obviously had to watch most of the game. What did you see offensively that was the biggest problem there? Because clearly not crossing the 50 until the fourth quarter. They get paid too. They did a heck of a job, but what did you see as the biggest difficulties?
It's a good defense. They're a top line defense, great front seven and a back end that keeps you guessing. So, anytime you don't move the ball steadily, it's a little bit of everything. It's not one thing or the other. I think it comes down to execution, and we just didn't do a good enough job of that. I obviously wish I could have been out there to try and help us, but I thought Chase and David did a good job when they were in there. Just the game got out of hand quickly, and it's tough to play a team like that who can really rush the passer, from behind as much as we were behind in that game.
You have been here before. You know the drill. The question will be about your availability this week. You're now dealing with the thumb. You're dealing with the ribs. You're dealing with a lower leg injury, according to the report. Are you gunning to play, or does there come a point now where you just say, you know what, there's too much going on, one game left. It's probably better if I step aside at this point?
It's still same old. I'm going to take it one day at a time, and if I can get moving and feeling good enough to go out there and be able to move around and protect myself and go play at a high level, I'll try and be out there.
I don't know what's left, Matthew, in terms of the tank for guys, but whatever's left, I am sure they will empty it. Chase talked after the game about, just having their pride crushed. I mean, nobody wants to put that out there on their record. So whatever's left against Minnesota has to be out there on the field.
Absolutely. If you're not ready to show up and play ball on this Sunday, then I don't know what's wrong with you. You got to get out there and we got to put our best foot forward. We got to play a good football game against a division opponent. A team that we've had some great battles with over the years, and it's opportunity to end the season with a win, which is something that we all want to do.
Final thing, you're not particularly fond of them. They're not particularly fond of you. There's a ton of respect there between both teams, but it's, as you said, a divisional game. That shouldn't leave anybody any reason other than to get fired up.
Absolutely. We only get, 16 of these opportunities kind of guaranteed to us at the beginning of the year. And we work extremely hard. And this offseason was crazier than ever. And just to have one last chance at it this year, I know I'm motivated to try and be out there if I can. And if I can, I'm going to try and help in every way that I can to help us get a win.
I'm sure I'm going to ask you this next week as well, Michael. But yes. I'll ask you right now. Week 1, 2021, is Matthew Stafford the quarterback of the Lions?
I hope so, Dan. I really do. Look, I like Matthew Stafford. Okay, I hope, but if you're going to rebuild the franchise and rebuild the team, and there's a way to do it, and you know what the way is, you have to take a big hit with the salary cap and all that. And if it's in the best interests of your team, and it's also in the best interests of Matthew Stafford, I think you have to do it. And I think it's a flip of the coin. I really do.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how the new folks go about it. I mean, it's something that I was kind of going back and forth with people about on Twitter this week. I understand why you move on from Matthew Stafford, that there is an argument for that.
Yep.
But just understand this as well. That's not the problem.
Nope.
On the list of problems that the Detroit Lions have, quarterback is probably last. And you have to fix everything else. And it's really just moving on. And a byproduct of that is you trade your veteran quarterback, you bring in the next guy. And as you fix everything else with your franchise, you're hoping and praying that the next guy is equal to Matthew Stafford. And if you get really lucky, better than Matthew Stafford.
Everybody's talking about, look, I want to keep Matthew Stafford, okay? But so that, to me, it's the big if you think you can do it. Okay, but let's just look at 3 years ago, Sam Darnold 2 years ago, I'm sorry, whatever it was, third pick in the draft. How's he doing? How's pretty good, eh? Oh no, I'm sorry, no, he isn't. How about Dwayne Haskins? How's he doing? He's out of a job.
Carson Wentz has been benched. Jared Goff, they're talking about moving on from him with the Rams. It is a crapshoot, man.
If you saw that game, I think it was Sunday night, and you saw John McVay shaking his head on the sidelines at Goff, not running, not making the tough throw. Franchises want players like Matthew Stafford, and the Detroit Lions should be one of those, but I understand the other part of it too.
Yeah, and it just might not be feasible to rebuild this thing in time to say, okay, we're gonna look at him and he'll be in year 15 and headed towards another contract. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that decision, but I'll tell you what, you start looking around this league and you say, you know what? If Matthew Stafford was in Washington, if Matthew Stafford was in, Terry Bradshaw said this to me, Los Angeles with the Rams, you start looking at some of these other teams that if they could find a way to get him on their roster, and I had this conversation, name dropping here, with Terry Bradshaw last week for a piece he did for Fox 2. For a lot of teams, Matthew Stafford's the final piece of the puzzle.
Oh, absolutely. And you would hope
I won't say a lot, but for a handful of teams, he could very much be the final piece of the puzzle.
Look, either you have your quarterback or you don't. There's no in between.
But there's some teams that kind of have everything else and don't have that. Maybe they thought they did, but they just don't.
No, this is a guy who doesn't flinch. He doesn't flinch under fire. You get the ball at the 5-yard line with a minute and a half to go, and you think you have the advantage. We've seen it over and over and over. And those players go back to the Atlanta Falcons game. Go to any game you want. Those players walk into that huddle with Matthew Stafford. They look at him. He looks at him. He goes, "Let's go, guys!" And they go because they have faith in him. And building faith with your teammates is part of being a quarterback. And that guy has it.
Take a break. Come right back. A couple minutes left on this edition of Lions Review. Stick with us. We'll return.
Back to more Lions Review. Presented by MGM Grand Detroit, the king of sportsbooks. Here's Dan Miller.
Kenyon's got it. Hangs it high. Agnew to his right. Under it at the 27-yard line. Gets back to the 30, 35, 40. There he goes, 45 to the 50, to the 40-yard line. And he's gone. Jamal Agnew back to the house. First of the year for him. Takes it all the way for the touchdown. There is a late flag that comes in as well, so hang on.
Touchdown is good after the play. Unsportsmanlike conduct on Detroit number 38. That 15-yard penalty will be assessed on the kickoff.
So Mike Ford called for the unsportsmanlike conduct. Return stands.
And I'm happy for Jamal because he's a guy that doesn't cheat you on special team. All his returns, covering. He's a guy that's full speed ahead, and that was just a nice lane that he hit, broke a couple of tackles. Next stop was the end zone. Nice job, Jamal.
And there was Jamal Agnew with his first punt return of the year for a touchdown, fourth of his career, fifth return overall for a score. And, when you list the things that are good on this team, Jamal Agnew in the return game would certainly be one of those. So, Michael, it's going to be an interesting week, to say the least. They'll get back out there for practice tomorrow. Best guess, Stafford play?
I think he'll play. I think he'll want to play. I think he'll start, and we'll see how far he goes.
Yeah,
they certainly don't do anything without him. That's been
no, goodness gracious, no. That's probably something else they need to address in the offseason is, well, we don't know if they're going to need a starting quarterback, but it would certainly appear a backup quarterback might be in order as well. Just nothing happening there. When we may get to see them again this week, we'll see. But heck, there's so many things that need to be done with this football team, Mike, that to sit here and list them. You first have to find the guy that's going to do it and make the decisions and chart the course going forward. I couldn't help but think, we got about a minute left in the show, what one Chris Spielman was thinking watching this game on Saturday. For a guy who approaches football the way he does, man, it had just cement for him, as if he didn't already know, which I know he did, just how far they have to go and how much work there is to be done.
You know, he thought at the start of the season, this is a 3-and-out video that we do on DetroitLions.com until he took this job. He thought it was a pretty good team, not a championship team, but a pretty good team. But as things went on during the season, his opinion changed dramatically. That's why he's here.
Mine too.
I have to say so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it would go better than this. And, I bet on some things with that defense that just didn't come through. And in the end, I think that's the main reason we're here. Hey, you just heard the call to the game sponsored by Ring Central, official partner of the Detroit Lions. Ring Central message, video, phone together. Thanks for listening tonight. We'll be back next week. One final edition of Lions Review where we look ahead to the offseason. That should be interesting. Michael, great stuff. Have a great week, everybody. We'll